Time for the next round of things on the M2. We've done the MCS three-way test. Now time to add on a few more suspension components, a few other goodies. We've got our precision front control arm bearing going in these factory tension struts. As we know, this joint critical for the front end braking performance and some extra just general performance of tightening up the front end, getting rid of that bushing. And then we've got these camber adding sleeves from MCS. We're gonna try out to add some camber without having to go to a adjustable front lower arm, get into more detail on that here in a minute. In the rear, we've got our offset rear lower spring arm joint, restore some geometry in the back, free up that rear spring arm. And we've got this anti-squat arm, which is actually the same as the toe arm. And we've got a little trick in here that we're excited to try out with these shim spacers to get the anti-squat geometry kind of where we want it, restore some geometry back there, not just leave this thing centered in the opening on the subframe. And then also, this is gonna work on the toe arm as well to be basically the bump adjusters. So we're gonna go through the process and get these things on the car, run through the bump with these different shims in place, see where we land, get a little chart together for you guys. Then we've got our solid aluminum differential mounts for this thing that also raise the diff 14 millimeters. See, offset there, and then that mount offset to restore the differential geometry, get those axles operating back in the right range of motion. As when you lower this thing, the axles start getting a little bit more angle to them, so we want to get that back where it should be. And then we've got these big boy Alcons, these 6-piston front, 4-piston rear, these massive front brakes taking 30 mil thick pads. So we got some PFC pads we're gonna throw in that thing. These MCS strut adapter sleeves add camber as they are a little bit angled. So excited to see how this does, as we could use a little bit more camber on this and don't wanna make the jump to adjustable arms just yet. You can see here, this is thicker on this end, thinner on this end. So a little bit of an angle there that's going to basically change the relationship of the strut and spindle, get a little bit of kick to it, add a little bit of camber. We're gonna dive in, see how these things work and see how much camber we can get. So one of the pieces we need to know on this when we're adding these sleeves on is the relationship between the tire and the spring perch or strut body is pretty tight. We jam a lot of tire in these things, is try to maximize all the space we can. So there's not a lot of room there. And when we put these sleeves in, the tire is going to kick over closer to the strut a little bit and add camber that way, which means that we may need to space it out. So Daniel's gonna work on getting a measurement of how much space we have between the perch and the tire currently. And then after he puts those sleeves in, then we'll get a measurement again. Hopefully it's not contacting, but we may need to add a little bit more spacer just to kick the wheel out away from that strut a little bit. Daniel has gotten the sleeve swapped out. Really, it's just this little sleeve right here that the strut adapts to the spindle, and now having a little bit of angle in that sleeve, we were able to get a good bit more camber. We ended up getting 8/10 more. I think this side was 3.6, and now it is at, what is it, 4? Yeah, now we're at 4.4 on this side, so 8/10 more camber than we were 3.5 on the other side, and we were at 4.3 on the other side now with these new sleeves. And that's with the camber plate maxed out. The one piece here is that the space, oh, let me get my light again. That space between the tire and the perch is now closer because of the relationship between the spindle, strut, hub, all the things. So we're going to space this out just a little bit more. We have a 15 millimeter spacer on here right now. We are swapping to an 18 mil, then we'll get a check on the clearance, make sure all is well. So now with that on, let's see. Oh yeah, that clearance looks way better. So now plenty of clearance out here, and because we're adding a little bit of camber, also still plenty of clearance on the outside. So we are looking pretty good on this. I'm pumped on this. Great way to add camber to this without having to move to adjustable arms for those that want to hang on to their stock arms on these things and not move to an adjustable rod end, whatever, lower arm on this. Note this is with the camber plates maxed out. So the max we were able to get was 3.6 and then 3.5 on that side, and now we are 4.4 and 4.3, which is more than enough. We'll probably dial this back to about 4 or so and see how it does. One of the first steps here before we get the shims in there and get the bump steer rolling, we want to get a baseline set up on this and make sure toe, camber, all the things are where they need to be so we know where that toe is at the static ride height before we start jumping into how it changes dynamically as we put the shims in. All right, so this is with it in the center location, right? The rear shim is in the center?
Yes, this is stock.
So effectively stock, and looking at this, as this goes through each increment, what is that? Minus 202 inches, minus inch and a half. Is that what?
That's
droop?
Droop, yes.
Droop, 0, then up. So this is basically telling you how much the dynamic toe change is as it is going through its range of motion. Well, that actually looks really good. That's almost nothing. That's at most we were 0.020 out, so feeling pretty close to 0. We're gonna see what the shim changes make to this now, as they're gonna put some shims in to start with 2 on the bottom, and then we'll put 2 on the top and see how this goes. We got James out here messing around with the M2 with us a little bit as we are playing around with a couple of new rear adjustable arms. We've got an adjustable rear toe arm for this thing that, as we know, toe arm on these is one of the early things you got to do so that you can get the camber and toe back in order, because once you add the camber you want for the track, you're not going to get the toe. If you add the toe you want for the track, you're not going to get the camber. So got a toe arm, but also have some little tricks built into this thing with some shim system so that we can adjust the rear bump. As we have gone through with another video, there's a lot of disadvantage to be gained with messing with the rear bump, and this is a nice simple way to play with that. So what do we got here, James?
Well, I'm going to take out the 2 free to use shims, and this is the standard arm that needs this much space to fit in the clevis on the car. Now the cool thing about the shims is you can place them, both on one side, both on the other side, or you can center the arm like so, which affects your toe steer. And so we went over this recently. We'll link that video below, talking about how you would get your rear roll steer, which is a pretty complicated process because you don't want to do all that setup work at the racetrack. The beauty of the shims is now you can adjust your rear roll steer at the track with a known increment. So if you have that neutral rear steer, pretty much no toe change through a range of travel, droop to compression, and you want pro steer, you want to help that car rotate a little bit more, you change your shim location. We've got some numbers here, and I'm sure we'll spit these out in graph format that we'll get to later. But that's going to give you pro steer. You can get on the other side of it and do anti-steer. It looks like smack in the middle is going to be, in the stock location is going to be almost 0 steer. So good for BMW, they got that right. But sometimes we do want that pro steer. Beyond that, we're doing some eccentric lockouts. So you are going to adjust toe with the bar itself. However, I think we got some tricks coming with those eccentric lockouts and maybe some pill type toe adjusters. Again, known increments so you can adjust toe at the track fairly easily. Always worth measuring. But if I'm at the track with by myself or even with somebody helping me, I'm not going to scale the car. This is out of bounds. But knowing what I can adjust with a pill fast and easily, I can get more testing done. I can progress my setup much faster. Now, Phil, this is a toe arm, but we have something similar coming for the other link on the rear. What do we call that? Is that like a trailing link?
Traction arm, rear lower control arm, rear traction link.
All right, so it's another one of the multi-link rear arms, and also one that gets replaced regularly. Puts a bearing in that location, so that's good. But the real magic on that arm, and again with this shim style adjustment, which we're going to be using on that arm again, is you are changing now by relocating this. You're changing your anti-squat on the car. So this is starting to get fairly complex, but it's like having all the tools you want in your toolbox for tuning your race car and making this thing work. We love anti-squat from a stock performance perspective because it makes the car feel stiff even though you don't have a lot of spring, but it hurts your traction. And so taking out some of that anti and letting your springs and shocks, now that you've got nice modified performance parts, more appropriate spring rate, letting that spring do the work rather than what is technically a vector version of an infinite spring rate, which of course doesn't really go well for playing nice with a tire. Anyway, letting that spring do the work is going to help power down significantly. You know, just a small adjustment. This looks like 2.5, 3 mil of adjustment per step. Significant difference in power out of the turns with these cars, and especially with the big power that these cars are capable of. So Phil and I were talking after we shot some of the information on the stuff we're doing here, and I know that rear toe steer video was a deep dive, and this stuff is pretty complex, but the beauty of it is it's not that complex for the end user, and we're taking out some of the difficulty for the end user, and we're just giving you tools to solve problems. So, you know, as a trailing link or whatever Phil called that, this arm with shims, if you have problems putting power down, you take out some anti-squat, and so you move your shims to this location. On this rear toe steer with some pill adjustment on the eccentric lockout, just an easy way to change your toe, and then with these shims again, so you can change your rear steer from neutral to pro steer, anti-steer. It's just a matter of, do I need more rotation in the corner because I can't make this thing turn mid-corner? Okay, just change the shim. So while we're talking about this stuff, and I think it's super cool, and I love the nerdy bits of it, you don't have to live there. You don't have to fully get all the bits to make these parts work for you and give you a tool in your toolbox that you don't otherwise have.
So we're doing sway bar bushings, diff mount, rear offset camber arm bearing, which means really to get to the sway bar and all this other stuff might just be easier to pull this whole rear subframe out, as just like BMW and a number of cars over the past few years, the rear sway bar is mounted on top, so to get those sway bar bushings swapped out, you kind of got to lower the subframe at least. You can lower it and then fish it out, but given where we're at with this thing, just easier to go ahead and pop this whole thing out. So going to get this rubber diff bushing swapped out for the solid one, as well as these rubber bushings up front, and gonna do our lift system so it raises the differential up. We are gonna have to notch out a little bit up here, I believe, when we put the diff lift in, because it's pretty tight up against there. They do this in the GT4s as well. So, gonna let the guys continue to get cracking on this thing. So while this is out, this bolt, when you try to back it out, goes into the body, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it goes into the body. So we're gonna flip that bolt so that it goes in from this side so that we can actually access it without having to cut it or drop the subframe again. And up front here, we've got Rich working on the Alcons, getting the front Alcons on. Look at this. Look at those big old beefy pads. One of the reasons we're changing these sway bar bushings is these things are bonded to the bar from the factory, so they don't allow the bar to rotate freely. So getting these things swapped out, you're gonna have to clean up the bar a little bit because there's probably gonna be some gunk attached to it and wire wheel, whatever gunk that's got this thing fused, and then we'll get those Powerflex bushings on, get that thing moving like it should. Rich has got the sway bar bushings in at the front. If you recall, before this thing was not able to rotate freely, now he's got that baby moving quite nicely, letting that thing move how it is supposed to. In the back, the subframe seems to be missing. Oh, I spotted him. I'm coming for him. We got Daniel back here. They have gotten the rear offset inner spring arm bushings in place. They are in the car, got them tack welded up in, and he just put a little paint on there to get them looking right and not rust. So gonna let that dry. They're gonna get this baby back in. Got the sway bar back on here too, also moving freely. Also got this notched out here and got that painted up for the clearance for that offset diff mounting so that it does not bang into that little cross brace there. Richard's got those Alcons on the front. He's got the front precision control arm bearings in here. Can you see in there? Yeah, a little bit. Got the brake deflectors on. Michael back here working on torquing up this rear brace. We've got the rear offset camber arm, spring arm bearing piece. We got the offset toe arm bump steer spacers. We got the offset anti-squat geometry changing pieces. We got some stuff going on here. Michael, we about to make this thing happen. You're about to make this thing happen so I can take this thing for a little spin. Still gotta put the brakes on this side, but we got them on this side. I think you guys don't need brakes. I do need brakes. I'll take the brakes. You guys are killing it. Gonna get this thing down soon, it looks like, to start the setup process, and then yeah, get this thing loaded up and head to the track here shortly. We got some feet hanging out from under the car as this thing is looking back together, which means old Daniel and Michael here working on setup to get this thing ready for the next steps, getting the toe dialed in, and then I'm gonna work on bump from there. Big props to the guys for getting this thing knocked out. They are working on the final setup. We are almost ready to head to Mid-Ohio. Got the rear bump all knocked out where it needs to be. Got the ride height set where it needs to be. This is not all the way set on the pads right now. Working on getting camber sorted out up front, getting the rest of this alignment squared up, and then we're gonna get this baby loaded and hit the road here soon.
Ready to go?
Should be an awesome race weekend.
We are ready to kill it this year.
It's good.
It's gonna be a wild ride.